Hey guys, welcome to the first part of a series on the Vult modules. In this series I will take a closer look at the Vult modules, looking at all of their features with some examples of course, and this video will be all about VESEC, the complex analog oscillator. Let's start. Okay, so first of all there will be a link in the description to the Vult website and also to the YouTube channel of Leonardo, the developer of the Vult modules, where he has lots of interesting videos about his modules. And let's begin with looking at VESEC and all of its features. VESEC is a part of the free modules bundle. It's a dual sawtooth core oscillator, which means that we have two oscillators and all of their waves are formed from a sawtooth wave. We have three waveforms for each oscillator: a pulse wave, a sawtooth wave, and a triangle wave. Each oscillator has a tune knob with three different modes: a fine-tune mode for fine-tuning the oscillator in a range of a semitone up or down, a coarse mode for tuning the oscillator in a range of an octave up or down, and a semi-mode for tuning the oscillators also in a range of an octave up or down, but in steps of semitones. We also have an octave knob for quickly changing between the different octaves. Each oscillator is also a pulse width knob, and that's an interesting thing about this oscillator. Under the hood there are actually four oscillators, two for each main oscillator, which are phase shifted 180 degrees from one another, and this allows us to change the pulse width, or the equivalent to pulse width, of not just the pulse wave, like we see often in many oscillators, but also of the sawtooth wave and of the triangle wave, and you can see how it looks like on the scope. Another interesting thing is that the triangle waves of VESEC are behaving differently in lower frequencies. They are much more harmonically rich as we go down in pitch, which can, for example, help in creating a bigger and more cutting through the mix bass sounds, and also add variation in sound when using them in a sequence. We also have the mix knob, which allows us to mix the two oscillators together or choose to use just one. Now, before we move on to the first example, let's look at the way we can modulate the different parameters of VESEC using the modulation section in the lower part of the module. We have 6 CV inputs with dedicated attenuverters, so we can also choose to invert the incoming signal, and we have 6 buttons and the modulation screen. By clicking the button of the input we want to use and moving the knob or the slider we want to modulate, we can assign a modulation source to almost every parameter of VESEC, and we can see the selected parameter on the screen. So here we have the triad sequencer from MSC HEC, sending pitch information to 3 VESEC oscillators, and they are all set up differently. The first one is using just oscillator A on pulse wave. It's a bit detuned and its pulse width is being modulated by the LFO. The second one is using just oscillator B on sawtooth wave, and also its pulse width is being modulated by the LFO. And the third one is using both of its oscillators, one on sawtooth wave and the other one on triangle. The mix knob and both pulse widths are also modulated by the LFO. To this I've added some drums using tremor, and a sort of a melody using the Turing machine and another VESEC oscillator. So you see how easy it is to create big fat chords using this oscillator, and this is even before introducing all the other cool features. In this section here we have a few more tools for changing and shaping the sound. We can introduce frequency modulation, and in this case it is linear FM, oscillator A is the modulator, and oscillator B is the carrier. If you want to know more about FM synthesis in VCV Rec, there will be a link in the description to a video I made about this subject. With the AM knob we can introduce amplitude modulation, and also here oscillator A will modulate oscillator B. We can also sync the two oscillators, and here, unlike in other oscillators, we have a sync knob, because in this case we have a gradual sync. At lower setting, the phase of oscillator B will be affected, and as we turn the sync knob even further, oscillator B resets whenever oscillator A does, and at maximum settings, we get hard sync. The thing about this sync function is when using it in conjunction with the FM, it can sort of straighten the crazy inharmonic signature sound of FM and make it a bit more harmonic and controlled. Another feature we have in VESEC is the shaper knob, which will add some distortion to the sound, and by using the offset knob, we can introduce offset to the sound wave before it's hitting the distortion. So here you can hear how we can get different sounds and colors using and playing with a few of the wave shaping features VESEC has to offer. We have two grid sequencers from JW modules, sending pitch information to two VESEC modules, which are going through a VCA to the mixer. Rampage is generating their volume envelope, and their shaper and offset functions are being modulated by different phases of the 8FO from Bog Audio. I changed also some of their settings like frequency and amplitude modulation, sync and so on. Another VESEC is receiving pitch information from constants through the VCV router, and also here I changed some of the settings. All sounds are going through Fric, and every time the VCV router hits step 3, it triggers an ADSR module, also from Bog Audio, which modulates the cutoff point of Fric. The trigger is going through a trigger to gate module to convert the trigger into a longer pulse, so the ADSR can operate at full capacity. Two more really nice features are the glide and fade functions. By using the glide knob, we can introduce glide or portamento, which will gradually transition from one pitch to the other, and when connecting a gate signal to the gate input, we can also decide if the glide will not be active on the same time when the gate is active, or if there will be always glide. We also have a glide output, which will output an envelope in the shape of the glide, and we can use this envelope to modulate the different parameters of VESEC or of other modules. The fade function will also produce an envelope each time it receives a gate, and by turning the fade knob, we can determine the shape of the envelope, and again, we can use this signal to modulate the different parameters of VESEC and also of other modules. By connecting a signal to the external fade input, we can change the envelope shape and create even more complicated envelopes. Here we have again the Turing machine, sending pitch information through Quantum to the first VESEC, which also gets a trigger from Quantum. It's then going through a VCA to the mixer, and by using the fade function we get its volume envelope. Another VESEC is receiving a gate through D-Gate from Bog Audio from the Turing machine, and also an external signal to its fade input. The generated fade envelope is modulating its FM amount, and it's then going through tangents to the mixer, and the cutoff point of tangents is also being modulated by the fade envelope. The third VESEC is receiving pitch information from the grid sequencer, and its glide amount is set to almost all the way up, so you can hear how it's gliding between the notes. To this I've added also a kick drum, which is also being triggered from the Turing machine. Okay guys, one more thing before we're finished. There is a master tune knob right next to the main output, with which we can tune both oscillators at the same time if we wish, and that was it. This was VESEC, the complex analog oscillator, a very unique sounding oscillator with many sonic possibilities. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe and hit the bell, and have a good one.